just want to get also.
What the hell was that?
It sounded like a plane crash.
Thomas Canavan's watch stopped working 3 minutes after the first impact on the North Tower. He was on the 47th floor and the impact was on the 93rd floor.
One report said, and we can't confirm any of this, that a plane may have hit one of the two towers of the World Trade Center. But again, you're seeing the live pictures here. We have no further details than that. We don't know anything about what they have concluded happened there this morning. But we're going to find out and, of course, make sure that everybody knows on the air.
Helicopter, a passenger plane just crashed into it. And this is live footage right here. Unbelievable. Hold! Yo, it's blowing up!
Our sister station, WNBC, of course, has a great deal of experience covering news events in New York. We're going to go to their coverage for a while.
And, fight it from it. If you're taking a look now, you can see that we've just had another explosion, and that is considerably lower. And is that in the other building?
Didn't appear as though nothing, that anything was wrong with the plane necessarily, that it was experiencing any trouble, but that it was in fact headed for the World Trade Center.
Across, I'd say, a good 10 city blocks, New York City blocks from that North Tower, there's a parking lot which I'm right over. There are cars on fire that evidently got hit by debris, and these cars are just burning untended to the ground. There's one completely engulfed in flames, and mind you, this is quite a distance from this first building, and those fires began right after the first explosion, and then just got exacerbated by this second one a few minutes later.
Maria?
Thanks, Mark. Well, I was standing outside watching the event, and it truly was like a movie. The plane going right into the second tower. There is debris which is continuing to fall in the area, and basically people are just standing around watching this extraordinary happening.
Maria, the size of the second airplane, we can see it on videotape, but because it's almost the same color as the building, a little difficult to see the size. Did it appear to you to be of a commercial airliner size or smaller?
It looked to be smaller than commercial. I'm not sure it happened so quickly, so I can't tell you exactly how large it was, but it definitely looked to be smaller than a commercial airliner.
Okay. It would seem to me, under these circumstances, you would tell them to land soon.
We don't have that tape yet, but I can tell you what he said. Quote, freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended. That from President Bush moments ago in Shreveport, Louisiana. That tape is making its way to us.
I'd say the hold takes about
Looks like 6, 7 floors were taken out. And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll tell you what's going on.
That the reports are preliminary and officials do not know the cause of the crashes. It certainly doesn't look like an accident, said a second government official, also speaking on a condition of anonymity. Again, the FBI, a senior government official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said both planes were hijacked and were flown intentionally on a suicide mission into the World Trade Centers. Again, it has not been confirmed by the White House.
You are wondering what might be the next area that is vulnerable.
Well, you know, and because of that, the thing that David said that maybe was most important is just stay home. You're not going to get anywhere anyway. Just stay home, stay safe, and be as relaxed as you can be.
These are live
the World
pictures.
Trade Center.
Something else has just happened at the World Trade Center. As you can see,
one of the towers.
One of the towers either has come down, perhaps something else has happened. The billow of smoke that we have not seen. The tower is down completely, according to our producer. The side of the tower has come down onto the street. The way that the smoke is billowing here, Louis,
right,
that is blocks and blocks. So if they even had them back just a couple of blocks.
And just to point out,
looking from Staten Island right now.
And they were back a good distance. They were back a good distance from that in case this kind of thing happened. But keep in mind, remember the attack on the World Trade Center in February of 1993 was designed, they pointed out during the trial, to bring down the towers. In fact, to bring down both of them. It appears that this time one of the towers is down, and they again had people a good distance away from this.
And you say something very important. If this is a terrorist attack, we just keep saying that on a repeated basis. Not having any notion whatsoever of what's going on is to be reminded not only of the efficiency of terrorism, but not just reminded of the efficiency of terrorism.
Know their status. We do not want to scare anyone, but we are, in fact, trying to ascertain the safety. There are, as you can see, we're getting reports. These are jet fighters. They appear to be. We can't confirm this, but we are getting word from our control room. These are U.S. jet fighters in the air around the Manhattan area. As you know, all airports around the country, not just in the tri-state, all airports around the country have been shut down as a precautionary measure.
Right now, city and federal buildings in Newark still open, though, again, heavily fortified. That's the latest now. We're going to continue to monitor these developments, particularly with the schools closing.
The other tower, as you can see, seems to be collapsing, David, as we watch.
Unbelievable.
This is, it's collapsing inward and it's imploding. This is a horrific situation you're watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you are a child watching and you do not have a parent there, I don't know what to advise you. If you can understand this.
It's hard for an adult to understand.
Words cannot describe this. The North Tower of the World Trade Center, the second 110-foot structure that marks the landmark, that is a landmark of New York and Manhattan, and indeed the United States, has just collapsed.
And if you look at the timeline in which all of this has taken place in such a short period of time, 8:45 until now at 10:29.
Here comes the second tower again from the ground floor. This is from our Michelle Charlesworth vantage point.
The north side.
She was on the West Side Highway when her crew shot this, and this is, you see it just imploding. Bill, I think it is important to point out that we don't know how far the evacuation had come to this point, but we do know that we have talked to people on the ground who are at least on the 56th floor. We know that there were people high enough up in that building so that they...
45 minutes before the evacuation. I mean
before the buildings came down, absolutely. And so it's fair to say that lots, hundreds and hundreds of people got out of that building without being terribly hurt.
We have reporters all over Manhattan and lower Manhattan. We're trying to get signals from them. As you know, if you try to use the cell phones appear to be out, and it's very difficult to have communication. It's very difficult. We've lost communication with John Del Giorno, our news copter 7. Dave Evans
is back here. Of course, he was talking earlier, this being primary day, and the very latest, there were discussions on what could be done.
I just got off the phone with the top officials at the Board of Elections. They have gone ahead and they have canceled the election for today. This is, of course, a primary vote. There was some question as to whether they could go ahead and do this because of what the general election provision is, that you can go ahead and cancel a vote if it's during the...
Dave, I'm interrupting for 1 second.
Go
We're seeing a U.S. fighter plane. And Jim, do you know what kind of plane that is?
F-16.
It's an F-16 U.S. fighter plane patrolling the skies of Manhattan. Dave Evans is here explaining that the election has been canceled today,
yes,
the primary election for New York City for mayor and about 3 dozen other seats. 1,000 candidates on that ballot, and obviously it has been canceled. Mayor Giuliani, David, do we know where he is?
We don't know yet where he is. Of course, the mayor's bunker. It was what we call it, and that is the emergency center where all of the police and the fire and the emergency officials go. That is on the 23rd floor of the World Trade Center, I believe in the North Tower. So we don't know exactly where, of course, the mayor is right now. We expect there to be a news conference. We've called down to City Hall, and we believe that they will have something out of City Hall here shortly. But that bunker is, of course, gone.
Yes.
All right. Let's go back to Michelle Charsworth, who is on West Side Highway with the very latest from there. Michelle.
Lauren, a quick question. Can you still hear us?
Yes, I can.
You are at St. Vincent's in the Village, is that correct?
Right, on Greenwich Avenue and 11th Street.
Okay.
All right.
Understandably so, but of course the major concern is human loss. I mean, do you know if there were many people in the building?
Oh, another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on this shot.
Oh my.
Something else has
You know what? We just saw a plane circling the building.
It is in the other building.
We just saw a plane circling the building a second ago on the shot right before
I
that.
think there may have been another impact. Can you tell? I just heard another very loud bang, and a very large plane that might have been a DC-9 or a 747 just flew past my window, and I think it may have hit the Trade Center again.
To be honest, Elliot, I didn't get the impression that it was that big a plane.
It looks big from here.
I did see a plane go by a second ago, though, and it has now impacted the building. I'm trying to see if it's the different tower.
Plane, according to that vantage point from Hoboken, that as you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene, Jim Friedel in Hoboken said it appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness, oh God, there's another one.
C'est vraiment étonnant. Ce matin, je me disais justement, si des terroristes voulaient faire une attaque, je regardais la Statue de la Liberté.
Hopefully people are going to be able to get out safe. Those stairwells, of course, are built especially for disasters like this. Just a sec.
I just asked if anybody had a computer, had a phone, or had anything, because so much of the power was down. People's cell phones weren't even working.
There were many reports of power outages at the WTC. Firefighters in the North Tower said after the power went out, the building was rumbling, shaking, and shifting. There were also many reports of cell phones not working and even building lights flickering. Engineers assured firefighter chiefs that the buildings would not come down even if 10 airplanes hit them. There were many reports of lights going out. The PDF of 499 first responders' witness testimonies can be found on my MES Links Telegram in the link and QR code below. There were also many reports of cars and their tires blowing up. A police officer thought the cars were rigged with explosives. Even Scott packs or oxygen bottles were exploding. The Earth's magnetic field shifted abruptly with each WTC event.
This was recorded in Alaska. Ground-based magnetometers at 6 different locations.
Yes.
At precisely that moment, the Earth's magnetic field changed.
It seems this would include the Pentagon event and Shanksville.
The charts of Earth's magnetic field is plotted in terms of the horizontal component H, the vertical component Z, and the angle D between true north and magnetic north. Note the low variation for the day leading up to 9/11. All the magnetometer readings fluctuate greatly as the events of 9/11 unfold, including the biggest variation during the afternoon as Building 7 was turning to dust. There was also a giant hurricane right off the coast of New York City on 9/11. Fumes from the WTC were also visible from space. Hurricane Erin was heading directly towards New York City before being pushed to the right by a cold front on 9/11. Weather data and Earth's magnetic field are plotted in sync. Note the sudden and linear drop of humidity from 80% just before the first impact to 40% just after the Twin Towers fell. Note also the gradually increasing air pressure until peaking when the South Tower fell and then falling to a bottom when Building 7 fell. This coincides with a high-pressure cold front arriving from the west, just as Hurricane Erin arrived from the east. Hurricane Erin's wind speed, pressure, and distance from New York City are plotted. Erin was closest to NYC on the morning of 9/11, with its distance, wind speed, and pressure being constant for each event.
If you look at the speed of the hurricane, the pressure of the eye of the hurricane, and its location, for about 24 hours, 12 hours at either side of the events of 9/11, is constant. It's like a very controlled environment.
There was also a thunderstorm in New York City on the day before 9/11 on September 10th, 2001. In the morning of September 10th, there were strange cloud formations surrounding the Twin Towers. Many buildings near the WTC showed circular holes in glass windows and damage to a single pane of double-paned windows. This indicates the windows were not struck with physical objects. There were also similar circular holes in glass windows of fire trucks near the Pentagon. Ron DiFrancesco, the last known survivor from the South Tower, was in the 84th floor, just above the second impact zone, and he walked his way down the stairs alive. He said his contact lens melted to his eyes.
What were the extent of your burns and other injuries?
So I got hit on the back of the head. I have a major laceration on my head here. I had burns on 60% of my body, and my contact lenses were melted to my eyes. So,
how did they deal with that?
I don't know. The optometrist or ophthalmologist peeled them off, I think, and I went through extensive testing on my eyes. And I have debris. I had debris in me for a while. So.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
I just stayed 12 days when I realized what had happened.
On the morning of 9/11, there was also a giant hole in the ground on 86th Street in New Jersey, which is a 30-minute drive from the WTC.
I think they're going to be... Yeah, talk about a rough ride this morning. Let's go down to 109 and show you what we mean. Check out this huge hole in the road. A partial road collapse happened here sometime overnight. As a result, 109 northbound completely shut down right here at 86th Street. And as you can see, only one lane southbound getting by. This is a road that people use to get to the Lincoln Tunnel. You're going to want to find some local roads to get around this mess. Workers are on the scene trying to fill in the hole or perhaps just find out why this happened. We pulled up on the scene maybe 20 minutes ago, and there's no telling how long it's going to get this fixed this morning. I'm April LaMonica reporting live at Chopper 4. Back to you in the studio.
Note the similar fuming or dustification as on the WTC. The seismic signals for the Pentagon impact were, quote, too high frequency and high amplitude to be associated with a plane crash, and seismologists concluded they were, quote, probably generated by an electrical disturbance.
Whenever it crashed, all the electricity was out.
All the telephones, we didn't have no lights until 10 o'clock. We were standing in the office and the lights flickered and everything. And
they said the phones were down in the Somerset area.
There were 45 people on board the hijacked United Airlines 757 when it nosedived into the ground at the edge of this old strip mine. Paula Pluta saw it all from her front yard and ran to the place the plane crashed.
Little pieces of metal. There wasn't anything there but little pieces of metal. I unfortunately did not see bodies.
For the small crater, about 20 feet around and at least 10 or 20 feet deep, the bulk of the remains of that plane and all the 45 people who are on board may be buried deep in that crater just in the field beyond these trees here.
And as I said, there is a huge crater crashed in an open field. All that you really see there is a huge crater. You can't even see it very well from our vantage point. A huge black gaping hole, as investigators are describing it. There is a lot of debris, most of it very small pieces of black charred remains.
No piece of wreckage was larger than a telephone book. No identifiable bodies were found. Just moments before Flight 93 crashed here, a passenger managed a cell phone call to the local 911 dispatcher.
This is one of those cases where the pictures really do tell the story, that sort of the most horrifying aspect of this particular crash scene is how little debris is visible. There is a large crater in the ground, and I'm hoping that you all are seeing it as I'm talking about it. But That's really all you see is a large crater in the ground and just tiny, tiny bits of debris. There's been at least one report that the investigators out there, and there are hundreds of them, as I said tonight, have found nothing larger than a phone book.
You might imagine people who live nearby say they heard the ground, they felt the ground shake miles away.
Residents close by talk of how their bodies shook and were lifted.
Heard a big explosion, and it felt like it lifted me right out of the chair. And ran outside.
That plane would come right for me.
They tell similar stories inside Snyder's corner store.
I heard this crash, and it literally took me right off my feet.
Carol Brandt describes what happened to an elderly friend as Flight 93 crashed.
It literally took her off her bed. She was laying down for a nap, and when she woke up, she was on the floor.
People who went to the scene, we spoke to one eyewitness a short time ago, said she saw lots of debris, but nothing very big. And in fact, that's what our pictures are bearing out, that the debris is very, very small.
I've seen the pictures. It looks like there's nothing there except for a hole in the ground.
Basically, that's right. The only thing you could see from where we were was a big gouge in the earth and some broken trees. We could see some people walking around in the area, but from where we could see, there wasn't much left.
Any large pieces of debris at all?
No, there was nothing that you could distinguish that a plane had crashed there.
Smoke, fire?
Nothing. It was absolutely quiet. It was actually very quiet. Nothing going on down there, no smoke, no fire. Just a couple of people walking around. They look like part of the NTSB crew walking around looking at the pieces.
How big would you say that hole was?
From my estimates, I would guess it was probably about 20 to 15 feet long and probably about 10 feet long or 10 feet wide.
What could you see on the ground, if anything, other than dirt and ash? And
you couldn't see anything. You could just see dirt, ash, and
Yes, I am, Michael. We just saw that as well. The second tower, the only one that was standing, tower number 1, just we saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out of the top of the tower. And
Ollie, you would have to assume a very, very terrible situation if that indeed is the case, because I'm sure there were people up there in that. There were people up there in that World Trade Center. Now, we have lost, again, our transmitter is on top of the World Trade Center, so we apparently have consequently lost contact with Dick Oliver, but we are on the phone with an eyewitness. Apparently, a large plane, according to that eyewitness, Jim Friedel, vantage point from Hoboken, that as you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene, Jim Friedel in Hoboken said it appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness, oh God, there's another one. Oh my goodness, there's another one.
This seems to be on purpose.
Oh my goodness, now it's obvious, I think, that there's a second plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. I think we have a terrorist act of proportions that we cannot begin to imagine at this juncture.
But I can reassure everybody that they seem to be holding up fairly well while efforts are going forward to fight the fires and whatever happened in those two towers.
Now we can see smoke emanating from many of the floors.
Jim, I don't know whether we've confirmed that this was an aircraft, or to be more specific, some people said they thought they saw a missile. I don't know how people could differentiate, but we might keep open the possibility that this was a missile attack on these buildings.
Now, we can't speak to the first one, but that second aircraft that went through looked like a large twin-engine or three-engine jet. Those are simply not around for private aviation.
Yeah, that's not your Piper Cub.
No, it is not.
That's obviously designed to do considerable damage to those buildings on this day when we're holding a primary election in New York City.
Now, I would imagine... Ollie?
Jim, what you're saying could be a drone aircraft. That's an aircraft that's guided electronically to its target without having a pilot. Now, that is a possibility as well. I have not seen ambulances come out of the scene. I've seen them go in. Hopefully that's a sign that there are not too many casualties as a result of this.
Actually, we were in our office building on 36th Street, and I went up to the penthouse where you have a straight downtown view. We saw the northwest tower on fire, and we saw either a slow-moving airplane go down, wrap around the tower, and then slam into the south tower in a ball of flames.
And
we are also told that the phone service in the building, we are having a problem with the phone service. The phones don't work. Joey was saying the cell phones, you can't get out on the cell phones,
cell phones
as
are
well.
out.
Yes.
What we're looking at is just the long picture.
It would appear, Jim, as if there's more smoke coming from the ground.
And when we just have another, yes, things have fallen to the ground and are burning. And we have another announcement now that you might have expected, and that is the Empire State Building is being evacuated.
It doesn't surprise me that we are the target of an attack. It surprises me that it's taken as long for us to suffer what we've suffered, and it creates a very heightened awareness of what we have to do now. The question becomes, do we sacrifice our complete freedoms in order to not suffer this? There's got to be a balance. But
I'll just interrupt you for a second, Mr. Jaffe. Just want to report to our viewers that we have reports now that the Capitol and the Treasury and the White House are being evacuated in Washington. Continue your thoughts, sir.
Have we been looking in the wrong places? We've been looking at terrorism in other areas. Have we been looking at them and neglecting our own backyard?
You could surmise that.
Okay, again, just a few moments ago, we had a woman named Brandy on the phone, and she told us it was another loud roar, and she told us... Also, this is... Kai, can you hear me? Kai, tell us what we're looking at here. These are fighter jets, one would presume, to prevent any further attacks by planes.
A friend of mine works for the FBI. He's, out in the field. He's an agent. And he tells me all the time that he's on surveillance outside people's houses who are known terrorists or possible terrorists. And they're constantly watching these people. So what I'm asking again is, how did this slip by? I mean, we can say, 20/20 hindsight, but this was obviously a synchronized planned attack on two states.
But are they watching the people in this country or the people in other countries?
Oh my goodness, look at the screen.
Goodness.
Oh my God.
Oh. Both towers down.
Oh my God.
I hope they evacuated everybody out of that area because...
Covered in smoke.
Just when you thought you might be safe, suddenly you were no longer safe because another portion of the building started to explode or fell off, and then the towers actually collapsed. You were also here very early in the... What did it sound like exactly?
It sounded just like a plane, but I looked up to see where it was coming from and couldn't tell. And all of a sudden that big explosion, I mean, you know, it just happened.
It'll take a little more time, it'll be a little bit problematic, and you'll resent it. But that's one of the things we're going to have to do. We have to start to make our airports more safe.
And of course, airports around the world have taken those precautions. I've tried to come out of the airport in Tel Aviv, and that is an experience.
It's like a 2-hour, you know, questioning period on every little thing that you do and what you've done in that country. But I've recently traveled to Europe, and for the first time in this country, I've had my bags really gone through, and they've really talked to me about who packed the bags, and did you leave these bags alone for any period of time? Those questions were never asked last year or the year before. This year, they seem to be really taking special care at the airports, but obviously not special enough that we had 3 planes hijacked today.
No, and the other point is I've said, and others who you talked to this morning say, if a person is bent on willing to give her life or his life to accomplish a task, it's very difficult to stop that. And what you have to do is make the impediment sufficient so at least they won't be successful and not aid them. And we haven't really done that. We haven't made ourselves security conscious. We take too much for granted and we think nobody will ever do us.
The land of the free.
And regrettably, the disaster today, the tragedy today shows that our awareness and what we took for granted, we can't take for granted again. We're going to really have to be much more mindful of how we're going to survive.
And we just have a little more information for the viewers. The plane that crashed in western Pennsylvania, we are now told, was United Flight 93 out of Newark, and it was headed for San Francisco. Now, was that one of the hijacked planes? Did some heroic pilot perhaps save an awful lot of lives in Washington? We don't know at this point, but we do know that it was United Flight 93 out of Newark, heading west, and could have been diverted to Washington quite easily if it crashed in western Pennsylvania, on its way to San Francisco.
I'm sorry to say that with our own eyes we saw at least a half dozen people jump from the North Tower before it collapsed as well. A big concern among most of the people down there, and certainly we can attest that there were thousands of people in the street. A big concern for them was breathing in the debris from the collapsing buildings. As you can probably see from the video, that debris comes in a huge black gray cloud that comes up the streets as though it were a menace coming up a canyon, and everyone had to get out of that scene. Just what exactly it's comprised of, nobody can say. Certainly many people concerned. And another problem in the World Trade Center area, up to about 10 blocks away from the World Trade Center, was residual effects of the explosion. One building that we saw about 8 blocks north of the World Trade Center, well, there were 2 people that were injured from impact from the second explosion. In other words, when the southern tower had that explosion, other buildings in the area, they lost windows, they lost concrete, they lost part of walls, and all of that debris either went into the buildings on which they were attached and injured people in the buildings, or they came out from the building and injured people who are on the street. And in the pictures that you see, people are in the street being triaged by medical personnel, and that's another thing worth noting here. We saw people from as far away as central New Jersey, that is ambulances as far away as central New Jersey, eastern Long Island. Certainly emergency personnel have rallied the troops in this instance, and obviously there is a need. Many people on the street just breaking down into tears, walking around aimlessly, not knowing what to do in a situation like this, and feeling ultimately helpless. I'll say in contrast to that, though, there were many people who, despite their fear, oddly enough, were taking photographs, even joking, I'm sorry to say, about what they were seeing. I'm not sure that, at least in the first hour after the initial crash, that people really understood the severity of this. And there are a lot of onlookers. We saw one woman who was weeping while she was snapping photographs with her disposable camera. Very, very odd situation. We also saw a firefighter heading to the scene, and while his fire engine stopped, he brought out his own small pocket snapshot camera and took pictures of one of the towers as it continued to burn. This was adjectives. The pictures tell this story, certainly. We're trying to convey a sense of what it was like with the people that were there then. One person we talked to, we fed the tape back, was on the 85th floor and was able to get out just before the building collapsed. He was in shock. Another person who was on the elevator in the lobby had to pull a man out as his, it's horrific to describe, but as that man's skin was burning and coming off of his body.
The reporter is referring to Kenneth Summers, whom eyewitness Stephen Newman said he was completely burned from head to toe and all of his skin had come off his forearms and his face and his hair was all gone, but none of his clothes were burned.
He was completely burned from head to toe and all of his skin had come off his forearms and his face and his hair was all gone and looked a little disoriented, so he seemed to be on his cell phone either talking to somebody or trying to reach somebody, and I asked him what happened. What was amazing about his story was that he was in the lobby of World Trade Center 1 when the first plane hit, and when the debris started coming down, he went back to go into the building to protect himself and was in the revolving doors going back in off West Street when he looked up and a fireball came flying out, I guess from the elevator shafts, that's what he seemed to believe, and blew out all the windows and threw him back onto the street, and obviously, you know, in a fire flash seared all his skin. But apparently nothing, you know, all his clothes, none of his clothes were burned. So that was pretty amazing. And
all right, James, thank you very much.
Let's hear from some of those people now. We talked with them.
I saw eight. I saw eight fall from the building when it first landed. First hit, when it first hit. Both towers are down?
It's terrible. I'm right.
That makes so many people must be killed now.
I'm right there. I went to the obstetrician with my girlfriend, and then we heard when this was going on. I'm like right there. I'm at the World Trade. I have a friend on the
south. Okay, what'd you see?
I was standing at BMCC.
What?
Borough Manhattan Community College. I'm standing on the corner watching, taking pictures. You can see the wings of the plane come from the south. It hit the middle of the second building.
The second plane was like...
I think they were delivering bombs. The explosion went up on that last building. There was probably a bomb inside the plane. He saw it too. The explosion went up.
The explosion went up like a mushroom. The second building.
The second plane was an old prop plane, like an old Dakota. Say it again. The second plane was like an old prop plane. It's a dual prop plane, like a Dakota or something like that. It wasn't a Dakota, but it came in low from over Newark Way, and you saw where the impact was, but it impacted, and then the explosion just blew out this way. Now some people are saying that there was 4 planes. And when the second one went down, it was another impact. Someone's just said there was 4. Well, just
MES note, there were at least 3 mystery planes flying alongside the alleged Flight 175 plane. One located southeast of the WTC and 2 at the northwest at different elevations.
Tell me, stick to what you saw.
I saw the second one impact, and then the building just come down.
I heard one boom.
I saw also the impact there at 9:05. And also there were some people coming down. It's terrible. I saw 4 people coming down.
They're all jumping.
I saw a lot of people coming down. At 9:05. It was 9:05.
How'd you get out then?
What happened was I was down in the basement. All of a sudden we heard a loud bang. And the elevator doors blew open. Some guy was burnt up. So I dragged him out. His skin was all hanging off. So I dragged him out and I pulled him out of the parking lot. This was what was left on it. Pulled him out. When I pulled him out, I looked up and the second second bomb blew off. Just saw a big burst. And then I saw people jumping out of the buildings.
Yes, there's the video you're looking at. These people waving frantically, trying somehow to get attention, somehow to save themselves from the inferno all around them. Moments later, the building collapsed.
You know, Jim, looking at this video we were discussing earlier, it is so eerie to look at this and know that those people probably did not survive.
It would be highly unlikely.
Some of those people actually jumped. My husband's office is close by, and he said he saw people actually either jumping or falling.
Some people in desperation, what do you do? Yeah.
Right.
Spokesman says that motorists leaving the city are being waved through the congested toll plazas. Nobody's taking any tolls today. South.
Now, at least 3 people were dead on arrival at the hospital. 2 others had to be transferred. One a severe burn injury. The hospital's president and CEO, Leonard Aubrey, says that immediate treatment was given to 200 people suffering from cuts, lacerations, and other traumas, some with severe chest pains and smoke inhalation. Meantime, those who arrived at the hospital were given face masks and bottled water, all of them, by the way, covered with soot and ash from the debris.
And I'm sure you've been telling us, in a sense, the positive things, in the sense that the injuries that something can be done about.
That area.
The word.
Jim, at this point we're being told that we have some videotape. It's reaction from the West Bank after hearing the news about the attack on the World Trade Center, and they're actually rejoicing in the streets. Now this is from the West Bank. It's really shocking when you look at that video. You see people coming out of stores with their thumbs up, like this is a terrific thing. Young children rejoicing in the streets, chanting, singing, like this is some type of celebration.
Well, Palestinians assume that the United States is a big supporter of Israel.
Right.
So we are one of their enemies in their minds.
Right, yeah, most definitely, and would be a definite target.
Let's take a look back now and look at some dramatic footage and get an idea of the dimensions of this tragedy.
Fulton and Broadway.
Which way to go?
Stay right where you are.
Stay where you are, man.
Stay where you are.
Chopper 5 on 3.
Stay where you are.
Chopper 5. Oh my God. You can get through to the truck. Into the station.
Adriana!
Everyone.
Well, there you see some of the aftermath of those bombings, that the people you saw earlier were cheering and applauding.
Just unbelievable.
It almost, you know, if you were watching this in a movie theater, you would think this was totally unreal.
This is some horror film or some disaster film that, unfortunately for us, is not a film. It's the real thing. I understand that Chopper 5 is up. Of course, they have to keep their distance as well, but they can take a look at some of the roads around the city. Is that Kai? Oh. All right. They have to shoot those shots from a long way away, so we lost
any of the normal routes, bridges and tunnels, everything pretty much shut down at this point for security purposes. But you can see down here off in the distance that large plume of smoke continues to rise over Lower Manhattan. Lots of people pulling over onto the shoulders on many of our major roadways just to catch a glimpse of something that is or was previously just unbelievable to them. But you can see quite a scene down here, chaos down there, no doubt, in Lower Manhattan. And people are no doubt really stunned about what's going on here, I being one of them.
Joe, when he was here earlier, the security expert, talking about how when something like this happens, there seems to be a concentrated effort on increasing security at the airports and other facilities, and then we become a little too comfortable with that in our society, and it becomes a little lax.
Unfortunately, that statue there to the left of your picture was not attacked and is unharmed. A symbol of freedom and liberty in this country.
Well, Brian has been monitoring the internet for us right now. Brian, what are you seeing over there?
You know, what's happening here is I believe everyone feels, if nothing else, a bit of a safety in being able to communicate immediately with the internet, because phones are down, so you're hearing a bit of panic on the internet saying, I can't get a hold of someone, but they're being able to email a friend who is emailing a friend when they can't get a hold of family members. I spoke with one friend who was speaking with a friend on the internet again, who was on the phone with someone in the second tower when it was hit. I am waiting to get that story as we speak. I'm also in touch with several contacts that I have regarding Afghanistan and that kind of situation and their take on it since the Taliban's denial of that kind of situation.
Watching our air, watching what is going on.
You still can't comprehend it, right?
And when the video was shown of that smoke just coming through, I'm looking at people downstairs that we work with who just, their eyes just filled with tears. I mean, this is one of the most dramatic things that I have ever seen happen in the 20-some-odd years I have been in broadcasting.
I think it would be really the most dramatic thing that most people in the city have ever experienced, especially if you're down there.
We go back now to Mr. Pilevsky, American Foreign Policy Organization, and we were talking about this terrorist group. Rosanna, you had asked.
Yeah, so you don't think it has anything to do with this terrorist group? You think Osama bin Laden is behind this?
Yes. Because this is a very coordinated effort. This had to have detailed planning. It had to have a tremendous amount of infrastructure to do this, tremendous coordination, and it had to have a worldwide network. That's the only organization right now that we know about that has that is Osama bin Laden's group in Afghanistan.
And that would have the financing to pull something like this off as well.
Right.
Now, we showed some tape earlier today. It was reaction from the West Bank, and it showed people rejoicing in the streets there, adults as well as children. The fact that Yasser Arafat has condemned this, does that really mean anything?
Totally irrelevant.
Doesn't mean anything.
Totally meaningless. Of course, everybody is going to every leader of any country or any group is going to publicly condemn it. However, you could bet a lot of them are, jumping for joy.
Yasser Arafat has been condemning all the violence in Israel for the past few months.
He's condemning it with this hand and doing it with the other hand.
It is very
irrelevant. But this is more than that. This is much. This really has nothing to do with what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Palestine.
What does it have
This has to do. This all started out. When President Carter allowed the Shah of Iran to be taken over by the group in Iran. Once Iran became an Islamic state, it gained a base and a legitimacy. See, this was only a fringe movement until Iran came into being. Once Iran came into being under Ayatollah Khomeini, okay, it gained a base and a legitimacy. Once it gained a base and a legitimacy, this became a transnational movement, which is a movement to go through boundaries. And this has been, since Iran came into being, this movement has been growing and growing, and it's been growing more poisonous ever since.
So this is just a strike, really?
Gone through boundaries. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So this is really a strike against the U.S. You're saying that it doesn't have that much to do with what's going on between Israel and the PLO. That it
totally nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do.
Totally nothing to do with it. The Khomeini movement had zero to do with Israel, and that's where all this comes from.
All right.
A lot of people have been trying to get souvenirs from the World Trade Center now that it is gone, and others are not happy about it at all. Let's look at tape.
When the collapse happened, so, you know, I guess it's what's left of a world landmark, you know?
We got a war going on, and you want some dust from people that got killed?
You could just see smoke pouring out of both buildings. We're looking at it. I was trying to find out from a policeman how we'd inquire about people in the building because my assistant was in there and one of my neighbors. And the first building started to collapse, and it fell pretty much just straight down, and there was a big cloud of dust from the collapse of the building, and we tried to shield ourselves from the smoke as best that we could to try and breathe. And there was smoke everywhere. It took 20 minutes for it to clear before we could see around, and people were just amazing, trying to help each other. Burger King down on Maiden Lane was out trying to give everybody water as best they could.
Now, that gentleman had come out of the subway just as the explosion happened.
Who has condemned all of the attacks in Israel. However, those attacks continue to happen.
The communications problems that obviously everybody is being affected by. Peter Faunus is on the phone right now. He is with Verizon, and he has to tell us, you know, amazingly, Peter, it seemed that you could not get a phone call into New York, but you were able to get a phone call out of New York. Is that pretty much the situation?
Well, not exactly. The fact is that we had calls both to and from our cellular and landline networks doubled from their peak normal volumes in the wake of the what looks like to be terrorist attacks in New York and in Washington, D.C. We are asking our New York City and Washington customers to use their phones for emergency situations only. Phone lines are extremely busy, and there are people, as you point out, who do try to call, who may experience a fast busy signal either into or out of New York or the Washington areas. The networks are operational at all times. The networks have been operational. The only piece of equipment, or a large piece of equipment that was destroyed, was a switch serving 40,000 people in the World Trade Center, and obviously that was destroyed in the collapse of the building. But
so obviously you have backup systems. There is certain redundancy throughout the phone system so that it does stay up.
We're also able to reroute calls. So people have been having a hard time, perhaps at times, getting through. But if they've tried multiple times, they have been able to get through. And so we've got. Typically in New York City, the normal daily volume is about 115 million calls in and out of the city. So you figure that if it doubles, it ends up being a large number of calls.
What you can see is that there is still a lot of T's. We have the ground as well. Everybody here trying to get ground still raging with what they are using besides just firefighting. Is because they definitely need to keep the water pressure going at this point. Think about these fire. Very physically difficult for these firefighters. Is emotionally difficult. That we are the now. Very kind to allow us to stay in the air so that you can photographs. And again, what we can tell you is that everybody else has been grounded. There are some F-15s, some military planes around. Who's flying and who's going? Helicopters flying into the port. Their Black Hawk Sikorsky, the air paramedics, which are the, of course, power rescuers, or the PJs as they're called. These are the same people who before. Along with the New Jersey State Police, are setting up a command center. As well, injured there as well. Now, what we can also tell you is that we took off right after the two buildings first were hit, and we saw the buildings on fire. Tower 1, the top portion of it burning. Tower 2 was hit more towards the middle, and then we saw some debris falling from both buildings, even very disturbing the windows and from the tops of the building. The whole building seemed to collapse upon itself. Tower 1 collapsed a little bit later and just fell into itself rather than and completely collapsed. Now, as you can well imagine, anytime you have an aircraft which is there in the center of your screen is what is left of the actual buildings fell and toppled, and so of course many of the buildings also missing many other parts. Do they ever wrap me? Yeah, I do. You know why? Because they were turn on one of them, but not both. Chet, you can always say to me, turn on your FMs. What was he saying? Rap? You're looking at live pictures from Air 11. We are the only aircraft allowed to fly in this entire country, which is not allowed or not a part of the military and or rescue operation at this point. Do not use your water. They need all the water pressure they can get at this point. They do have some unusual firefighting equipment on the ground today. The firefighter, which is a water boat. It is a firefighting boat, and basically it sucks water out of the Hudson River and takes it directly to a pumper, which relays it to another pumper, and it's called a relay pump. 11,000 gallons of water per minute. It's an amazing piece of equipment. Also on hand are volunteer tugboats piloted by volunteers who have again brought their tugboats down, which can also suck water out of the river and then have connected to different hoses in the general area and are able to then put water onto this fire without having to go into the water mains. It's hard to say. Perhaps some of the water mains may have even been damaged by this actual explosion and collapse of these buildings. But again, we have some unusual firefighting equipment in this area, which definitely the smoke is getting much, much thicker now. As we're looking at our window, we're hovering at about 1,600 feet, 1,500 feet. And I'm telling you, this smoke is probably 5,000 feet into the air. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And again, the smoke is getting much, much thicker. It seems to have rekindled. Something seems to have caught on fire, which obviously is adding a lot of fuel to this fire. And don't forget, it's not just one building that we're talking about on fire. Several buildings are on fire at this point. Many buildings have totally disappeared, not just the World Trade Center. We were looking at the World Financial Center earlier. All you can see that remains of the World Financial Center is the very front of the building. As I said before, we are the only air traffic control which is up. Air traffic control has asked us to land. We have been the only aircraft allowed for a couple hours at this point, and they have now asked us to land. So we're going to do that, and we're going to send it back to you. Back to you in the studio. Lyndon. I know, but tomorrow we go out of Caldwell. You guys decided, you know what? They have told us to go back. We must land. We are landing now. So that is the end of our coverage for today. I still can't believe it's not there. Are we powered down?